China, and I'm very excited that we're making a festival here, so I want to meet Chinese audiences and find out what they think of the music that we're performing.
It's a lot of music for us, so it feels like we're working quite hard.
Very excited, yeah. It looks like an amazing place to be.
Because I'm genuinely not sure whether people know the music that we're going to be playing.
I spent the whole journey. I spent the whole journey reading the book, so it looks good.
去年12月11号签署这个战略合作协议的半年之内，就落地了第一个这样的一个合作项目。在这个过程当中，我们最终是定下了这个聆听20世纪这样一个主题，来向上海的这个乐迷来推荐这个20世纪的音乐。各位领导、各位嘉宾、媒体朋友们，下午好！2013迷你音乐节即将在今晚拉开序幕。
我们希望这个两岸的音乐爱好者和艺术家，有更多的人能够从我们这个两个艺术机构架起的这个桥梁上能够走过去。
For the 5 days, we would look at those concerts in a new way. So all of the concerts will be presented by either Sarah Moore Peach, who's a broadcaster and a presenter of music in the UK on radio and of live events, or by Professor Julian Johnson, who is one of our leading professors of music in the UK. Well, South Bank Centre is it's the UK's biggest art centre. It sits on the River Thames.
Well, I grew up in London, so for me the South Bank Centre was a real home from home. I used to go down there at weekends, and the foyers are always open, there's music happening there, and I encountered all sorts of new musics that I'd never come across before.
For anyone that lives in London, the South Bank Centre is the most important venue.
因为南艺术中心本身，它在节的这种运作上面是特别有丰富的经验的，很好的创意。那么我们也想尝试一下，因为这个其实是整个将来的这个艺术活动的运作的一个大的方向吧。
So we have technical staff coming at 9 o'clock.
我们9点会有技术人员会来是吗
？To check the film.
Is there anything after that?
Not quite sure yet now. So maybe the press will ask me if they will have ask something in the later days.
But for the moment, it's all tomorrow.
Yeah, for the moment, yeah. 当然，一开始困难是非常多的，比如说相互之间还不是很了解，但还是有很多的磨合在里面。那么到中后期，我们开始实质进行到操作的阶段当中，那还是有很多的，有些是矛盾，有些是大家相互之间的理解。
对，吊杆是在这个贴着这个还是贴着这个之前？
It's a building, they're not even building it. Right.
So it will be on the 3rd or the 4th. Yeah, that's what.
Well, I hope that this festival in Shanghai will be a good introduction to people of all kinds of different music written in the 20th century.
Very broadly, from the first concerts today, we move from the beginning of the century, even just before, and we gradually, chronologically build up towards pieces that were just written a few years ago. Music that still sounds quite romantic. Debussy's Prélude à l'après-midi d'un faune can still sound familiar, but it moves in rather different ways. Through the music of the first half of the century, coming from very different parts of Europe and America, people drawing on folk music traditions to renew the language of classical music. Through the middle of the century, when a very kind of radical avant-garde changes the language of music. Through to the latter part of the century, when people rediscover kinds of music from way back, much earlier music, or as we were saying earlier, from other parts of the world?
Well, I have to be really honest that I'm not entirely sure about how well this repertoire is known in China. I'm getting very mixed reports. Some people tell me, oh, everyone's heard Debussy, Shostakovich, Messiaen, you know, this music. And other people say this is completely new to our ears. It's like a series of doors, and each one of them is an opening. And you hope that one of those doors, somebody feels inspired to open, and the music is behind it.
那么为什么会想到就是说通过讲述20世纪的历史背景还有文化的所有这种变迁来讲述20世纪古典音乐的这个发展呢？
The 20th century was such a period of
包括之前的一个知音30分的一个导赏，大家都非常用心的在聆听，通过3个人的互动来跟大家来应该说是来交流漫谈我们的20世纪。
Impressionism is not a term that musicologists normally use, so it is one that we borrow from painting.
Our first piece of music on the programme is not from the 20th century, it's from the very end of the 19th century by Debussy, his Telly pour la Demi la Folle, the prelude to the Artistry of the Fall.
This festival, I'm presenting concerts and hosting some of the pre-concert talks.
It helps people have ways to think about it.
So I feel like my role is really to help flesh out some of the information and also some of the perspectives to help people listen to this music in a way that makes some sort of contextual sense.
Actually, I'm a fan of your breakfast program on TBS, so I'm actually coming here for you and for this concert. And welcome all of you to Shanghai.
Yes, it was amazing. So we were sitting there in a talk and somebody asked a question and she said, I'm a huge fan of your radio show. I listen to it on the internet. And I was completely flabbergasted. I had no idea really that people that internationally listened to the show. Yeah, it was a really amazing feeling and really wonderful to meet her. You know, the world felt very small suddenly.
So what is the first thing that we hear this evening? You hear a solo flute start very quietly and slide from one note down all the notes of a scale to another note and back up again.
You know, the beat and the key and the tempo of the music are taken away, and you're hanging in space with this music.
Where's it going to go next? And the whole piece moves like that. It's wonderfully evocative, it's dreamlike, and that moves in a very different way to earlier music. You know, if you think of a Beethoven symphony, you kind of know how it goes. This piece, you don't.
Aurora Orchestra are just such an exciting, young and new force on the British music scene. What's interesting about them is, well, they present music in different ways. They often do it sometimes with film, sometimes with talk, both of which we'll be doing in different concerts.
Peter and the Wolf is really interesting. I actually hadn't seen the film before, so this is my first chance to see it.
Something educational, to help children in this case understand classical music, introducing the instruments of the orchestra.
For me, I grew up listening to it as a child, and now I have a godson who is about 3 years old, and he's listening to it as well, and we sit together and listen to a tape of it, and he can identify all of the different bits of the music. Oh, he said there's the cat. You know, he knows everything that's happening in it.
光阴的节奏。
As the Royal Orchestra to the Shanghai Concert Hall for the wonderful invitation to be part of this mini festival.
It's really interesting to be here in a music college on the other side of the world, because we always are working with conservatories in the United Kingdom and in Europe, and it's so different to see how people are working in China to such a high standard. We're rehearsing for a concert which takes place at the Shanghai Concert Hall, and we're doing a suite from The Firebird by Stravinsky, a Russian composer.
Okay, so it just needs to be a little bit faster.
上海音乐厅呢，它不仅是一个舞台，其实它也是一个本土青年人才的，就是我们可以说是成长的一个摇篮。
It's so funny. Main road, which goes all the way to the river, and we're off to the left of it.
Bustling. The city is just like a hive. This is for I see. So this is for Stravinsky's Firebird Suite, which is a big setup on stage.
And when we get to just a little bit faster, just keep it moving.
And there was a really special atmosphere there because we don't know each other and the players don't know each other, and suddenly they're sitting next to each other, and you can just see people are everyone's on the edge of their seat because they want to make a good impression.
20世纪音乐技术上比较难，音乐上有的也比较难，所以一般性接触的比较少，只有比较高年级才会在接触20世纪，一般都是19世纪、18世纪技术比较难。
That's an exciting project to bring two orchestras together.
It was great, yeah, very good. I mean, we didn't have a lot of rehearsal time, and it came together very quickly. Yeah, that's what we have to say to the Chinese. But I
learned piccolo is
Yeah. Stravinsky comes from this Russian musical tradition where using the instruments to their uttermost potential, playing the highest notes, playing very fast, not just a regular beat that doesn't change, it changes between different patterns very, very quickly. So the conductor and the orchestra have a tough job to stay together and make it really precise.
如果要在20世纪的这个作曲家当中选定哪个
真正具有代表性的那么应该就是我们今天晚上要听到的斯特拉文斯基了。
It's exactly 100 years since one of the most notorious moments in music history. In 1913, there was a riot in Paris at the very first performance of Stravinsky's famous ballet, The Rite of Spring. But as we're going to hear in the Firebird, he was already making musical innovation 3 years earlier.
You could listen to this piece again and again and again, and every time you hear something different.
那么我们首先呢要听到一段这个乐团为我们展示的这个音乐呢，是描绘这个卡斯魔王他所统治的这个魔法王国当中的这个景象的这一段音乐，它是由大提琴和这个丁芬斯所演奏出的。
So in this illustrated concert, what we'll be doing is picking out a few things beforehand as we talk through it, so that when you listen you recognise something and you think, ah, that's really interesting, I hear how that fits in with that.
If you take a snapshot of music today, there are so many different styles, nobody could say one thing is 20th century music anymore.
That's the opening of Schoenberg's Chamber Symphony, written in 1906, which you can hear the whole thing of this afternoon at 5:30. Our understanding of the physical universe was reconfigured by Albert Einstein, while our own interior nature was remodeled by thinkers like Sigmund Freud. Painters, poets and musicians sometimes reflected the confusion and anxiety of the modern world.
What I did today was tell a history, which in a way you can read in a book. But for me personally, the really interesting questions are, what does all this mean? And where's it going? And what do we do with this music? Why is it valuable? So those are just the sort of questions I like.
我们现在听古典的音乐是几百年的还是能听得了，因为它还是在同一个调性体系里面。但是我们在听现代音乐的时候，可能就很多就不能理解了。您对现代音乐对于现在当代的这种审美的这个定位，您是怎么样来看的？
The questions were really fascinating, which made me think that people in the audience were really engaged with, where music is at the moment and where it's going.
Modernists saw their task as pushing the boundaries, inviting people to see things in a new way or to feel things in a new way.
挺好的，挺有启发的，也学习到很多东西。也想听听这个英国的一个音乐学院的教授，他对于20世纪整个的一个是怎么一个解读的。
20th century music is my absolute favorite period of all musical history.
I don't know how to answer that. No, it's all right. Just give me a sec, I'll find it. I just think...
I think sometimes you have to look to individual stories, the life of a composer, what happened to this composer, and then by extension, the world that they were working in and what they were trying to do with their music.
Well, for me, what's really exciting about the 20th century is the rate of change. And that's mirrored across everything.
In Vienna, in the works of Schoenberg and his pupils, there was also a turn to new principles of order and to less intensely emotional music.
开创了一个叫序列主义的音乐，那么这个序列主义可以说是20世纪最主要的音乐形式之一。那么这个对一般的听众来讲可能会比较具有挑战性。
He tipped over the edge, took away the tonal center of music and provided a whole new logic for music.
5月5号的下午，还有一个梅西安的叫《时间终结》，非常著名的一个4重奏。那梅西安是20世纪中后期一个非常非常重要的作曲家。
Very soon after he became a soldier and joined the army, in fact in June 1940, he and many other soldiers were captured as prisoners of war after the fall of Verdun. He met 3 other musicians, a cellist Etienne Pasquier and a clarinettist Henri Acoca, and a bit later a violinist Jean de Boulaire. Messiaen composed a solo clarinet piece for Acoca, which was to become the 3rd movement of the quartet for the end of time.
It's a visionary piece of music because it's a piece that you can't, it's very difficult to program it with anything else.
Olivier Messiaen is a kind of one-off. There's nobody quite like him. He was fascinated by non-Western music. He was fascinated by Indian music and traditional Greek music. All of these things come together in his music. So his music draws on all of these different musical traditions.
感觉还是挺不错的，而且这个欧若拉乐队的这个演奏，其实也是水准是非常高的。
I think things changed hugely at the beginning of the century. If you think about it, something like technology changed absolutely. People went from, travelling with horses and carriages and trains.
And today we drive and we fly all the way from London to Shanghai in a few hours. So the rate of acceleration of change and the rate of innovation has been extraordinary.
And I think the arts have played a role in expressing people's reaction to those changes, but also giving them a way to try and help them to understand them better, to express themselves.
我们今天晚上呢也有一名独奏是 Oliver Coates， 就是坐在我身边的这一位音乐家。
The more you study the music, the more you find that in many ways there are like a montage or a tapestry in the music of melodies that mean something straight away to that audience.
That we're hearing tonight in West Side Story, he draws upon very accessible, very popular tunes. I mean, the kind of tunes that we're hearing this evening are music that, or rhythms certainly, and music that you would have heard around the sort of landscape of New York in the 1950s. So he was doing what classical music had rather forgotten, drawing on the popular culture of his own times. One often says that Haydn did that, and classical music rather forgot it.
also the West Side Story dances by Bernstein, which is like jazzy, American brash, drum kit, trumpets.
For me also, the 20th century is so important because it's what lays the ground for now. And I'm really interested in what's being written now. You know, I want to know what my contemporaries are writing and what they have to say.
I think what we have to do is find ways of presenting classical music that are not boring or formal.
大家的生活节奏都很快，大家的思维方式都跟以前不一样。
In the UK, there is a tendency sometimes, if I'm brutally honest, to apologise for classical music. I think we're all guilty of it in some way. Because classical music has dropped out of popularity, broadly speaking, with the rise of pop music, certainly among young people.
I think people say that because sometimes they just don't get the exposure to it. And the moment that you allow people to come in and see the wonderfully imaginative and vibrant work that's being created, they change their mind.
Well, my job is working in the media, presenting classical music to people, and I always try to find that way of unlocking a door for people, to give them a hook, I think, to get into the music.
应该说，在上海的话，上海音乐厅因为一直是我们上海老百姓的一个，大家都称之为一个家里的一个会客厅一样。在很多的老上海能够在上海音乐厅找到他们儿时或者说年轻时代的一种青春的记忆。那么所以上海音乐厅呢也是希望就是说在这个音乐厅这个平移以后重新装修以后呢，也希望能够给现在的很多的新上海人，也能给他们特别是年轻人带给他们更多的这个音乐的欣赏的一种新的平台。
业余爱好而已，说没有很认真或者是非常专业的去仔细学习那些就是20世纪音乐或者是古典音乐。但是我觉得这些音乐的话，就是对我们平时工作节奏比较快的人的话，都是一种心灵的放松。因为我想音乐它应该是可以贯穿整个时间的一个艺术品，然后是不需要说我可能很难理解，它不需要语言，我相信全世界所有的人，不管什么年龄、什么性别，都是可以理解到的。
Throughout the 20th century, lots of European composers became fascinated with the music that they heard from other parts of the world. And of course, in the latter part of the century, it's worked the other way too.
So Huang Ruo, you're Shanghai-born, I believe, Shanghai-born composer.
His folk songs will be performing. Again, that music has a simplicity about it and a look to older models, in this case again to folk music.
Standing ourselves and understanding our place in the world. It gives us a kind of vocabulary for feeling, if you like.
It's a way of celebrating all the important moments of our lives.
And somehow for me, music was one of the things that kind of anchored me and helped me to find a way of understanding what was going on inside me.
Weddings, death, joyous happenings, sad things, ceremonial, public occasions, very private things.
And I wanted to know why that was. I was really curious, why is it that when I put this piece of music on, I feel elated? Why is it that in bar 46 of this piece of music, I suddenly feel like the world has dropped out from underneath my feet?
It says something about our civilization, that we can create these works, and we're not just going from A to B and doing what we have to do to survive. It's not just about eating and sleeping. There's something more that human beings are capable of, about creating paintings, music, films. That for me is what life's all about.
I haven't seen enough of Shanghai, but I'll certainly come back. It's been a really exciting city to visit for the first time.
We've had some wonderful food. We've seen some of the sights a little bit, but we've been so busy that it would be wonderful just to spend another week here and really experience this great place.
今天是一共是最后一天，应该说是把整个音乐节推到了一个高潮。那么，而且从我们的乐迷角度来讲，包括我们的工作人员来讲，我们也跟我们乐团的乐手，包括我们几位吉利安，还有我们的朱烟教授，包括我们的 BBC 的主持人，我们都建立了非常深厚的感情。